Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. So today is 22nd June 2024 and in today's session we have few important articles from both the Hindu and Indian Express newspapers. We'll try to discuss all those important news articles in an exam relevant manner. And we all knew that before actually going into the discussion part. So let's try to solve yesterday given practice question. You all knew that yesterday I have given one practice question, that is with respect to the Kavach system. This Kavach system we have already discussed in our previous classes, and this is also a very important question but easy question, right? Now the options with respect to this question: option A, it is a two-factor authentication to the user for accessing the government email service. No, this is not the correct answer. And option B, it is automatic train protection system across the country's rail network. Yes, this is the correct answer for this question. Now Kavach as a system which enhances the safety and security of railways, and at the same time it prevents collisions between two trains on the same track. The Kavach system essentially aimed to prevent accidents which were happened like last year Odisha accident or recent accident that took place in West Bengal. So therefore it enhances the safety and security of the passengers and prevents collision of trains which are on the same track by alerting the systems which are put in place as part of the Kavach system. Now if you look into this Kavach system, Kavach is an indigenous in the sense that it is domestically developed automatic train protection system for enhancing the safety of running trains. By it is being developed by Indian Railways. So Indian Railways developed this Kavach system, and it is indigenously developed system, and it is also automatic train protection system to enhance the safety and security of the passengers and prevent collision of trains, right? So the Kavach system was announced first in 2022 Union budget as part of India's Atmanirbhar Bharat program, and in fact 2000 kilometers of rail network is planned to be brought under the Kavach system, and this is an indigenous world-class technology, that is Kavach system. And in fact one of the challenge with respect to the deployment, a large-scale deployment of Kavach system, is that 1 kilometer of Kavach deployment across the tracks costs around 50 lakh rupees, and because of the cost implications, it is bit challenging for the Indian Railways and the government of India to implement Kavach system on a large scale. However, over a period of time, the government of India has been planning to include around 2000 kilometers or brought 2000 kilometers under the Kavach system. So this will also be a pilot project so that we will be able to understand existing shortcomings and loopholes in the Kavach system and its functioning. Now today also I have given one important, very important practice question for prelims examination. So just answer this question in the comment section and I'll provide correct answer in tomorrow's class. The question was: Champions of the Earth Award that recognizes outstanding environmental leaders for the public and private sectors was established by whom, or it was established by which body? Option A, International Union for Conservation of Nature. Option B, Food and Agriculture Organization. Option C, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And option D, United Nations Environment Program. So this is with respect to the Champions of Earth Award, and this award is given to the outstanding environmental leaders from the public and private sectors, was established by which of the following agencies? So please try to answer this question in the comment section and I will provide the correct answer in tomorrow's class. Right, so we'll start this discussion with a very important editorial on the Myanmar's recent crisis because of the military junta taking over the power from the democratically elected government under the leadership of Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, so what is India's stance? India is one of the largest democracies in the world, and in fact India has a stable government, a stable democratic culture in the region. So therefore, how India can aid Myanmar to come out of this crisis, and how India can provide a humanitarian assistance, and how India can actually play a leading role or a larger role in further preventing this or further escalating the Myanmar's crisis, is a very comprehensively and detailedly discussed in this particular editorial. Now we'll try to understand these consequences of it, Now, we all knew that in Myanmar, the democratically elected government was dethroned by the military coup. Now, the military junta has taken over the power of Myanmar, and when the military junta in 2021 February taken over the power from the democratically elected government, now there is a civil war-like situation taking place in Myanmar. So, civil war-like situation is because of a lot of organizations and even the strong supporters of the democratically elected government have been started fighting against the military junta. So very often this particular resistance from the civil society or civilian groups has led to a large scale violence, and that has created a humanitarian crisis in Myanmar. So therefore, in this context, since Myanmar has been sharing its borders with India, and because of the civil war-like conditions and humanitarian crisis, the immigrants also coming into the Indian side. So in this context, we will understand what exactly will be the India's role in this Myanmar conflict. Now, like how India can further prevent escalation of this Myanmar conflict, right? Now, if you look into the context of this article, is that 3 years on, the military in Myanmar, which actually overthrew the elected civilian government. So earlier there was an elected civilian government, and that elected civilian government was overthrown by the military junta or military coup in February 2021. And in fact, when military junta taken over power in Myanmar, that led to the continuous killing and displacement of hundreds of people or thousands of people. And in fact, India has steadfastly or continuously maintained a formal relations with this military regime. So despite there was no democracy, despite military coup taking over power in Myanmar, India surprisingly continuously maintained formal relations with the Myanmar's military regime. And in fact, the author has been telling us that the military regime so far killed or murdered around 5,000 people, and it also displaced some 2.5 million people as well, right? So when we look into this overall crisis in Myanmar, right, so in foreign policy there is a no clear line between values and interests. So particularly with respect to the Indian foreign policy, right? So there is no clear line, or there's no clear distinction between what constitutes values and what constitutes interests. Now we are solely dealing with the our interests, because it is said that when military regime in power in Myanmar, our interests are served better rather than the democratically elected government, right? So because of that reason, we solely looking after our interests rather than taking into account the values. Now values in the sense that there's a violation of human rights, and there's no democracy, and civil war has been taking place, humanitarian crisis, right? So different sections of the Myanmar society has been facing a lot of difficulties and a lot of misery because of this military regime and its violence in Myanmar. So therefore, if you look into the Indian foreign policy, there is no clear line between what constitutes values and what constitutes interests. And in fact, so when we look into India, it is possible for India, with respect to Myanmar, so to put a more progressive and value driven Myanmar policy. So we can actually frame such a policy, more progressive and value driven policy, and this particular policy actually works in favor and not against the national interests of our country. So now when we are dealing with this military regime, we keep in mind our national interest, because we believe that our national interests are better served whenever there is a military regime in Myanmar, and because of that reason, we are not strongly raising our voice to establish a democratically elected government in Myanmar. But on the other hand, when we frame this progressive and value-driven Myanmar policy, so that actually help us serve our interest, and at the same time, it also fulfills the values of our Indian foreign policy. Values in the sense that protection of human rights, rule of law, and humanitarian crisis, and people's needs to be addressed, everything, right? So in fact, this particular new policy that the author has been emphasizing, India should emulate, should have a two key pivot points. So namely, so it should be based on democracy and human security. So these should be the two key pillars based on which India actually can frame its policy towards Myanmar, right? So those two key pillars are democracy and human security. We all knew that recently 18th Lok Sabha elections were held, and new National Democratic Alliance government has came to power. So therefore, India needs to take four interlocking steps immediately to address this humanitarian crisis and civil war like situation on India's neighborhood in Myanmar. Right now, in this context, how India can step out of China's shadow? Now, how can India step out of Chinese shadow? Now, a Chinese shadow in the sense that whatever China doing in Myanmar, India also doing the same thing, right? So in order to compete with China, whatever China has been doing, India has also doing the same thing. But China is not a democracy, but India is a democracy, and India can do more for Myanmar to ensure that the existing situation would not last longer. Okay, so that is why the author has been suggesting that India should frame a more progressive and value driven Myanmar policy. And in fact, India needs to use its credentials as the largest federal democracy, right? So we all knew that India is a largest federal democracy, not just in the region but also in the world. So therefore, it can actually sharpen its influence in Myanmar. That will actually help India serve its interests, and it will also help prevent violence in Myanmar. Now, when we look into the Myanmar, so there was a democratic resistance against this military junta. Okay, so when military coup takes place and the military regime has been ruling over Myanmar, so there was a democratic resistance in Myanmar from the different groups of people. However, this democratic resistance is ideally led by the National Unity Government. So this is also known as NUG, and this National Unity Government has been leading the democratic resistance. Now, apart from this NUG, there were a lot of ethnic revolutionary organizations, civil society organizations, trade unions, and all these organizations have been striving to replace the military drafted 2008 constitution with a federal constitution, and this federal constitution should help Myanmar establishing more responsible government. So by helping this vibrant opposition, especially, the author has been suggesting that India should help this democratic resistance in Myanmar from different organizations. So by helping these vibrant oppositions actually achieve its aim through capacity building and knowledge exchange programs, and that is what India should do with respect to these democratic resistance in Myanmar. Now, author directly suggesting that India should help these democratic resistance groups in Myanmar by capacity building and knowledge exchange programs. So when India builds capacity and knowledge exchange programs, so it will help Myanmar to achieve a federal constitution, right? So they can replace the military drafted 2008 constitution with a federal constitution. And apart from that, Beijing and New Delhi can actually sell military hardware to Myanmar, and this is also happening as of now. Both China and India have been selling military hardware to the military junta and that further perpetuates the violence of military junta against the people. So therefore, but India can only sell the spirit of federal cooperation. Now, no doubt that India has been selling weapons to Myanmar's military junta like China. However, India can also sell the spirit of federal cooperation. So therefore, here it is a chance that the author has been telling that there is a chance that a new Indian government to outmaneuver the Chinese in their own backyard. Now, this is an opportunity that we can outmaneuver China in Myanmar because we have the largest federal democracy, and we can also help Myanmar build capacities and knowledge exchange programs, and that actually help Myanmar to ensure stability as a country whole. Now, stability in Myanmar in the sense that stability in Myanmar will ensure stability in the region, and that will benefit India, because one thing that we need to understand is insurgency is a very crucial problem here, especially in the northeast, and northeast also a very sensitive and volatile region. Now, if we combat insurgency in if we wanted to combat insurgency in northeast, we must ensure that Myanmar is stable, right? So in this context, we'll understand weapon sales and humanitarian outreach. Now, when we talk about this weapon sale and humanitarian outreach, so India, in fact, the state owned hardware companies or the hardware manufacturers, for example, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, right? So Hindustan Aeronautics Limited is a state-owned military hardware manufacturer. Now this is just an example, right? So there were a number of state-owned military hardware manufacturers, and these military hardware manufacturers actually sold a range of non-lethal and semi-lethal equipment to military junta from 2021 COP onwards. Now what happening is that whenever most of the Western countries have imposed sanctions on this military junta, but on the other hand India and China regularly supplying weapons to the military junta, so that actually perpetuates the violence of this junta on the civilian population. So instead of this, so India should actually sell the spirit of democracy, spirit of federal democracy, and it should actually help the people of Myanmar to achieve peace and security, right? So in fact India sold more than 1.5 million dollar worth of navy grade diesel to junta linked entities since the COP has been taken place. And in fact the author has been suggesting that, or the author has been recommending that Delhi or India should immediately stop selling these hardware, military hardware or military equipment to the military junta, because Myanmar military continues to use all these three services, the army, air force and navy, to attack non-combatant civilians and using lethal tactics. Now whenever the military junta perpetuating the violence against the civilians, so that will not good for any country. And in fact Myanmar is our neighboring country, and at this point of time it is not desirable. So therefore India needs to immediately open the cross-border humanitarian corridors. So because of the crisis in Myanmar, what India has done in most cases, India crossed most of its borders, because across northeast we share a border with the Myanmar, right? We also share a long border with the Myanmar. Now whenever Myanmar has been facing when Myanmar has been facing this crisis or the conflict, what India has done, India has immediately stopped this cross-border movement. And in fact if you remember that India also planning to completely stop this free movement regime. Okay, so what is this free movement regime? Under this free movement regime, they earlier they don't require, for example, anyone wanted to come to India, so they don't require visa for a few days, but now they certainly require some permits, some visas to come to India. So therefore this free movement regime decision was also taken by the Ministry of Home Affairs for the greater security of India, or especially the northeastern India, and also prevent the illegal immigration into Indian side from Myanmar, because we also have a lot of security concerns, especially the insurgency in northeast is one of the major concerns that we have been facing. So therefore the author has been suggesting that because Myanmar has been going through the humanitarian crisis, so we need to open these cross-border humanitarian corridors, and these cross-border humanitarian corridors will actually help civilians who are affected by the conflict. Okay, so in this context, the continuing airstrikes by the junta and clashes between armed groups in these areas have only pushed more civilians across the borders, right? Because violence has been continuously taking place. Now more civilians have been looking for the safer options, and because of that reason they are coming towards India. So therefore the author has been suggesting that India should open more open cross-border humanitarian corridors, so that in difficult times India should help these people who are violence hit, right? So in fact New Delhi or India first revoked its plans to fence India-Myanmar border. Okay, so this is India-Myanmar border, and because of the crisis in Myanmar, what India has been planning to completely shut down the borders and completely stop this free movement regime between India and Myanmar. Okay, so this is also known as FMR, and Union Home Ministry has suspended this free movement regime on February 2024. So there will be no free movement of Myanmar people into Indian side. So okay, so that is free movement regime. However, the author has been suggesting that India should engage in existing humanitarian aid networks, right? Whatever networks which have been providing humanitarian aid to the civilian population Myanmar, so India should engage with those humanitarian aid networks along with India-Myanmar border and send emergency relief assistance, including medicines, food, and tarpaulin to the other side. So this is how India can do and help the people of Myanmar. And apart from that, when we look into the northeast and the northeastern states sharing their borders with Myanmar, so you can clearly see Myanmar. So Myanmar is actually known as a multi-layered asylum zone. Okay, so because in Mizoram, the aid ecosystem is already operational, and it is a good starting point, and India should emulate such asylum centers in different parts of northeast. And India should also collaborate with the local and international governmental organizations which have been providing the humanitarian assistance to the civilian population of Myanmar. Right. So in fact, India is very well known for its soft power, goodwill, and such moves from Indian side will also generate a lot of goodwill and soft power. Soft power and goodwill are actually sustainable. They are long term. Okay, so they are in the they are not in the minds, but they are in the hearts of the people. So therefore, this will also help significantly generate a lot of soft power and goodwill for Indians. So after that, recently there was a detention has been taking place for asylum seekers. Now asylum seekers, because in order to escape violence, they wanted to escape violence, and they are migrating into the several states in northeastern India, and they are considered as asylum. And now the government has been detenting these asylum seekers. Now one thing that we need to understand here, people from Vietnam coming into India or entered India not because they wanted to or with a malified intent. Okay, so they don't have any malified intent whenever they're coming from Vietnam to India. Rather, they're coming to protect themselves. They're coming for the safety, because the military junta has been perpetuating violence against the non-combatant civilian populations, and because in order to escape that, they're coming into the Indian side. And in fact, when we talk about the accepting immigrants into India, so India has not signed, did not sign a 1951 Refugee Convention, right? So a number of countries which have signed this 1951 Refugee Convention, but India did not sign this Refugee Convention. So if India signs this Refugee Convention, there will be an obligation on India to accept refugees from other countries. But since India did not sign any such convention, there's no obligation on India to accept refugees, right? So it is incumbent upon the government to treat them as refugees in need of humanitarian assistance and protection, rather than considering them as illegal immigrants that would actually bring a more hardships for the people here, right? So in fact, Indian constitution and international law actually allow the Indian state to do so. So Indian state to provide relief to people who are escaping the violence which is being perpetuated by the military regime. Right now, next I have another very important article, so that is with respect to India and Bangladesh relations. Right, we'll try to discuss this in a very detailed manner, because recently Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had a visit to India, and in this context we'll try to understand India and Bangladesh relations, and what is the historical background and the current relations, and what are the challenges for India with respect to Bangladesh. We'll try to understand this in a very detailed manner, right? So first, a look into the context of this particular article. The context is that, as I have already told you, that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh arrived India for 2-day visit. So that is being watched keenly, because it is the first state visit by a foreign head government. So after Prime Minister Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister for the third time. We all knew that after 18th Lok Sabha general elections, Prime Minister Narendra Modi became Prime Minister for the third term in a row. And in fact, when we talk about Bangladeshi Prime Minister, current Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, she always maintained cordial and friendly relations with the Modi government, right? So in fact, both these leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh, have taken a very critical and a very important decisions earlier also, because they've taken decisions on critical issues such as combating pandemic and even a lot of security matters. Now when I say security matters, so insurgency is a problem in northeast, right? So they have taken a lot of initiatives to prevent this insurgency problem in northeast, and also combating pandemic, especially the COVID-19 pandemic. So during COVID-19 pandemic, India has extended all support and assistance to the neighboring countries and Bangladesh also. However, when we talk about Bangladesh currently has been facing some sort of a financial crisis. Now, financial crisis is because high inflation. There was a higher prices, higher inflation in Bangladesh, and apart from that, it has also been facing the banking sector liquidity crunch. Now, at this point of time, Bangladeshi Prime Minister's Sheikh Hasina visit to India gained a lot of significance, because India also maintained a very friendly and cordial relations with Bangladesh since its birth. Now remember that when this 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War took place, India played a very important role in liberating Bangladesh from the rest of the Pakistan. Now we'll understand briefly the historical ties between India and Bangladesh. Whenever we talk about these historical ties, the foundation of India's relationship with Bangladesh laid down in 1971 after Bangladesh Liberation War. Now this Bangladesh Liberation War led to the emerging or birth of Bangladesh as a separate nation, which is separated from Pakistan, right? So this actually provided India, we all knew that India provided a critical military and material support to assist Bangladesh in its fight for independence from Pakistan after its birth. However, when Bangladesh has emerged as a separate nation, so there were some issues between India and Bangladesh, specifically because of some military coups and military regimes in Bangladesh. So that led to some developing some anti-India sentiments in Bangladesh. But over a period of time, we are largely successful in stabilizing our relations, right? So when we talk about the bilateral relations between India and Bangladesh, first and foremost, we need to look into the economic cooperation between these two countries, right? So whenever we talk about the economic cooperation, so the bilateral trade and commerce between these two countries has grown substantially over a period of time, because they are very close neighbors, friendly countries, and because of that reason, the bilateral trade between India and Bangladesh has grown enormously or steadily over a period of last 1 decade. And when we talk about the size of, or the total contribution of either Bangladesh or India to each other's trade, Bangladesh actually emerged as India's largest trade partner in South Asia. So it is Bangladesh is India's largest trade partner in South Asia, with bilateral trade actually reaching a US dollars 18 billion. So total bilateral trade actually reaching to $18 billion, right? So this was in 2021-22, and US dollars 10.8 billion in 2021. Even though there was some dip in the bilateral trade between India and Bangladesh because of some reasons. Those reasons were COVID-19 pandemic and Russia-Ukraine war. We all knew that how the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia-Ukraine war actually crippled the global supply chains, and that led to some dip in Bangladesh and India relations as well. Now, in fact, India is also the second biggest trade partner for Bangladesh, and if you look into the exports, the total exports of Bangladesh into India, it is around 2 billion US dollars into the Indian market. So therefore, for Bangladesh also, India is a very important regional partner. However, when we look into the free trade agreements between India and Bangladesh, in the year 2022, both nations have concluded a joint feasibility study on comprehensive economic partnership agreement, right? So even though this joint comprehensive economic partnership agreement not yet signed between these two countries, but they have done a joint feasibility study in 2022. So we can expect that very soon we can sign a such comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Bangladesh, and that will further help us increase or enhance our trade relations with the Bangladesh. And in fact, this comprehensive economic partnership agreements actually gains additional significance as Bangladesh set to lose its least developed status by 2026. Now Bangladesh is in the least developed country status, right? So it is expected that by 2026 Bangladesh would lose this least developed country status, thereby losing its free duty free and quota free market access in India. So this is a remind to be seen how this losing of status by Bangladesh will actually impact the relations between both these countries, especially with respect to trade relations. However, since 2010, India has actually extended line of credit, right? So India has extended line of credit to Bangladesh worth over US dollar 7 billion, right? So India has extended so for line of credit in the sense that generally India provides such assistance to all neighboring countries like Bhutan, Maldives, Bangladesh and Nepal, right? So this is part of India's neighborhood policy and also ensure that there is a financial stability in those countries, and at the same time whenever China has been giving loans to these countries at a higher interest rates, so generally these countries would normally averse to such loans if India provides such loan line of credit to these countries. So far when we talk about lines of credit which are being extended to Bangladesh, so far India extended over $7 billion of line of credit, and after that there were a number of other infrastructure projects also. For example, both India and Bangladesh have successfully concluded this long pending issues such as land boundary agreement in 2015, right? So this is in fact included in the 100th Constitutional Amendment Act. So that is the land boundary agreement and at the same time the maritime dispute over the territorial waters. So they have successfully concluded this. And in 2023 also Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister of Bangladesh Sheikh Hasina inaugurated this Akhaura Agartala rail link, and this particular rail link connecting Bangladesh and Northeast through Tripura. Now whenever we look into the Northeast, the problem with the Northeast is poor connectivity is a major problem. Now because of the poor connectivity, we are exploring the opportunities from neighboring countries such as Bangladesh and Myanmar, so that we can rapidly upscale infrastructure in the Northeast. And apart from that, both India and Bangladesh are members of the BIMSTEC organization. So BIMSTEC is a 7-member grouping, Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. So therefore, this BIMSTEC master plan for transport and connectivity actually focusing on further stepping up or further upscaling the transportation infrastructure projects between Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, and thereby establishing a comprehensive shipping network between all these countries. And because connectivity ensures the economic integrity of different countries. Now economic integrity is very important here, because economic integrity and connectivity will further give a lot of impetus to trade and commerce, people to people ties, and so that will actually help us explore the existing potential with respect to trade and commerce, right? So after that we need to look into the multilateral cooperation also. Whenever we talk about the multilateral cooperation, both India and Bangladesh were part of different multilateral organizations, right? So these multilateral organizations essentially aimed at ensuring the regional cooperation, regional stability, regional peace, connectivity, commerce, everything, right? Now we all knew that this is very famous, that is South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, right? So taking inspiration from the ASEAN, SAARC was also established to achieve regional integration, connectivity and regional cooperation between all South Asian countries. However, largely it was unsuccessful. We can say that the full potential of SAARC is not yet realized because of the bilateral disputes between number of countries which are part of this SAARC. And these countries also have suspicions with respect to India, because India is one of the bigger power in among all these SAARC countries, and because of that reason and the economic size and the military size of India, these small countries are generally not engaging with India in a cordial manner. So therefore the potential of SAARC is not yet explored. And on the other hand, we also have Asian grouping, and Asian grouping is one of the successful grouping. However, both India and Bangladesh are members of SAARC grouping, and in order to achieve a greater cooperation and explore potential of South Asia, a BIMSTEC, an alternative organization to SAARC, was established, and this BIMSTEC is Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, and both these countries are also part of Indian Ocean Rim Association. So they wanted to have a regional cooperation here, right? So in this context, growing Chinese influence in Bangladesh. Now when we talk about the growing Chinese influence in Bangladesh, At present, Bangladesh is an active partner in the Belt and Road Initiative. Right, so this is an active partner in the Belt and Road Initiative. We all knew that this Belt and Road Initiative is a project which is launched by China across the different parts of the world, and in fact India is not part of this Belt and Road Initiative, but Bangladesh is part of Belt and Road Initiative. So because of this Belt and Road Initiative in Bangladesh, there is a significant amount of investment that is coming into Bangladesh, and in fact that is threatening India's presence in Bangladesh or India's relations with Bangladesh. So there is China's increasing involvement with Bangladesh, and that could potentially undermine India's regional standing, and it also impact India's strategic aspirations in the region and beyond the region. Now in this context, what should be the way forward between India and Bangladesh relations? So it is very important that we need to understand the way forward also. Now whenever we talk about this way forward between India and Bangladesh relations, there is a need to establish joint task forces. So these joint task forces actually comprising the law enforcement agencies from both India and Bangladesh. So these law enforcement agencies can effectively combat the cross-border drug smuggling and the human trafficking also, because with respect to India and Bangladesh, challenges are the drug smuggling and insurgency and human trafficking. So therefore, whenever we establish such a joint task force which comprising the law enforcement agencies from both countries, we can effectively deal with such challenges. And after that, we should also have a shared intelligence and coordinated operations to disrupt illegal networks which are present on each side of the border in India and Bangladesh. And after that, we should also have a smart border management solutions, and these smart border management solutions must use artificial intelligence and data analytics, right? So they have to use artificial intelligence and data analytics so they can actually streamline cross-border movements while ensuring security and efficiency. Now most importantly, so digital connectivity corridors have to be created for further strengthening the digital connectivity between India and Bangladesh. So that should focus on high-speed internet connectivity and digital services. So this is about India and Bangladesh relations and challenges way forward. Now we'll look into another very important article. So that is Uttar Pradesh leads in compressed biogas potential, right? So this compressed biogas potential is also known as CBG. So that is compressed biogas, and Uttar Pradesh as a state leads in India with respect to the production of compressed biogas and its potential. Now Uttar Pradesh actually holds a remarkable position in India's renewable energy landscape. Now whenever we talk about this compressed biogas, so it is in fact a renewable energy, right? So it is a renewable energy resource, and Uttar Pradesh actually holds a remarkable position in India's renewable energy landscape. So because it is having a potential to generate around 24% of the nation's compressed biogas. Now 24% of compressed biogas production is not a small feat, right? So therefore, according to a report by Delhi-based think tank Center for Science and Environment, Uttar Pradesh can actually generate 24% of compressed biogas of total biogas production in India. Now we'll look into the key highlights. So what were the key highlights? The key highlights here are Uttar Pradesh could actually potentially install 10,000 compressed biogas projects. Okay, so in fact, out of 5,000 plants that are being envisioned across the world, across India, so 1,000 compressed biogas plants or projects can only be found in Uttar Pradesh. And that is how Uttar Pradesh can produce around 24% of the compressed biogas. And in fact, the 500 compressed biogas plants are envisioned to set up across India under this SATAT program, that is Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation, right? So Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation. So that is known as SATAT program. So when we look into the Uttar Pradesh and its potential to produce compressed biogas, so there's a huge feedstock available. Now feedstock is very important because we use a feedstock to generate biogas. Now when you look into the western UP, particularly districts like Muzaffarnagar, Meerut, Saharanpur and Bijnor, Bulandshahr, Aligarh, so they are very rich in feedstock. So feedstock is available in these districts at a large scale. And So in fact, these all districts houses the majority of states functional and upcoming CBG plants. So there will be no problem of availability of feedstock, and availability of feedstock means we can continuously produce the compressed biogas, and compressed biogas will actually reduces the dependence on fossil fuels, and it is also a climate friendly fuel, right? So along with that, Uttar Pradesh has also been launching supportive policies to further develop the compressed biogas production. And in fact, Uttar Pradesh has an ambitious bioenergy policy. And therefore, for this ambitious bioenergy policy, Uttar Pradesh has allocated around 750 crore for the compressed biogas while providing subsidies for land lease and other incentives. Now, whenever these subsidies and incentives are being extended by the Uttar Pradesh government to production of compressed biogas, of course, it attracts a lot of investments, and of course, it gives, it encourages the production of compressed biogas in a more sustainable manner. Now, in this context, what is the reason that why Uttar Pradesh stands out as one of the leading states in production of compressed biogas is because Uttar Pradesh significant potential for this compressed biogas production is actually supported by its bioenergy policies that the government has launched, right? So this bioenergy policy actually including financial incentives and infrastructure support that is being extended by the state government to the compressed biogas production. Now, as I have already told you that there were a number of states in western UP, so there is adequate feedstock is available, and this feedstock can be used for the compressed biogas production. And after that, it is also located in a strategic area or strategic location of Uttar Pradesh, because the proximity of feedstock sources and these compressed biogas plants is not too far. So therefore, it actually helps that there is a regular availability of feedstock for these plants, and they can continuously generate this compressed biogas without any interruptions. However, there are a number of challenges which are being faced. Now, what are those challenges? One challenge is limited offtake of bioslurry, right? So bioslurry is actually a byproduct of this compressed biogas production, right? Whenever this compressed biogas is produced using the feedstock, bioslurry as a byproduct is being generated. Okay, so this bioslurry is often viewed as a disposal problem rather than a revenue source. So they don't see this as a revenue source, rather it is being seen as a disposal problem. So therefore, there is a limited offtake of bioslurry, and also the partial gas offtake. So partial gas outtake in the sense that compressed biogas is produced by these plants. Oil and gas marketing companies are inconsistent in purchasing these compressed biogas from these plants which are producing this CBG, leaves many plants operating below capacity. Now, oil and gas marketing companies, if they are not ready to purchase this from the plants, now of course they will not ready to produce up to the capacity. However, so the required measures, so what measures have to be taken in this regard? So first and foremost, we need to focus on enhancing the awareness and utilization of bioslurry. So we should not look this into a disposal problem, rather we need to look into the revenue angle of this bioslurry, which is a byproduct of compressed biogas production. And in this context, we need to educate farmers and other stakeholders who are involved in this compressed biogas production, explain the benefits of this bioslurry and transform it to a valuable resource, because with bioslurry we can produce the fertilizer, right? So those fertilizer can be used in crops, and that reduces farmers' dependence on the chemical fertilizers. And after that, we need to compel this oil and gas marketing companies that they regularly purchase the compressed biogas which is being produced by the plants. So therefore, there is a need for consistent offtake of CBG by the oil and gas marketing companies, and this would increases the plant viability, and they can also produce a huge amounts of compressed biogas over a period of time. And apart from that, we need to establish training centers for the compressed biogas operations, right? So there should be a dedicated training centers and develop skills and impart all knowledge with respect to the compressed biogas, and address any queries with respect to the production of compressed biogas. And after that, last but not the least, government backed financing is also very important for this compressed biogas production. and therefore we need to introduce government backed guarantee programs, so that could ease the financial hurdles that the producers of compressed biogas has been facing, and it would also encourage investment in compressed biogas production across, not just in UP but across India. So next important article is mugger or marsh crocodiles, right? So why this mugger and marsh crocodiles are in news? So it is in news because recently a 5-foot long mugger crocodile and a number of turtles were died in fire engulfed in vegetation along a reservoir in central Gujarat, Kheda district this week. So because of that reason, this mugger crocodile is in news, right? So in fact, when we talk about this mugger crocodile that you can see here, so it is a medium sized because it is around 5 foot or 5.54 foot crocodile. So it is a medium sized broad snots. Okay, so there are actually broad snots that are present, crocodile native crocodile which is native to the freshwater habitats in India, and the species feeds on insects, fish, reptiles and mammal populations. And mugger crocodiles are covered under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So we all knew that there were different schedules which are given different degrees of protection to various animals across India. And when we talk about this mugger crocodile, Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, so this mugger crocodile is included in the Schedule 1. Schedule 1 in the sense that highest protection is being extended to this mugger crocodiles on similar lines like tigers, elephants and even lines. So since 1982, the species has been marked as a vulnerable. So it is marked as a vulnerable species in the IUCN Red List, International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List. So this species is marked as vulnerable species, right? So apart from that, so India is actually home to 3 primary species of crocodile. Now what are those crocodile? So first native species was mugger crocodile or marsh crocodile, and this mugger crocodile or marsh crocodile found in lakes throughout the country. And after that there is also a saltwater crocodile, and this saltwater crocodile found along the eastern coast of the country and Nicobar and Andaman Islands. And after that gharial, and this gharial is found in river areas, especially in Chambal River of Madhya Pradesh. These gharials are actually found, and this gharial is a freshwater crocodile. So that is what you have to understand here, because already there was a question in UPSC about this gharial. So gharial is a freshwater crocodile, and it is Chambal River is its natural habitat. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our lecture, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.